Hey guys, this is Anan with some Conqueror gameplay today. Sorry this has been a little bit delayed. This is a tank that's pretty heavily requested to do some video on, and I honestly completely forgot about it. I've had footage sitting around and never actually got the video put together, so thought I would do that today to share with you, because this is a pretty fun tank. But I think it confuses people a little bit because you see that it's a heavy tank, so you try and drive it like that, and it's really more of kind of this funky hybrid where it's certainly heavy, it's not necessarily fast, but it's fast for a heavy, so you kind of have to treat it in the IS-8 range where it's kind of a heavy, kind of a medium. I prefer to run it with mediums where you can kind of come around the corner with those quicker tanks and all of a sudden have this monster gun in the battle, because that's really its best feature, is just a fantastic gun that carries over, and it can really dominate a battle, thus the damage farm name, because once you can get it into the right position, it can really start tearing through some tanks. So here on Middleburg, and I'm just kind of pushing up through. We've started to spot their mediums a little bit, so I'm just being a little bit cautious. I normally would like to work up another ridgeline past this, but since the red team has pushed up so far, I'm not able to do that. So I'm just trying to get into a little bit of cover here. Don't want to trade a lot of shots with that E50, but he's completely gotten himself exposed, so I'm happy to start farming the damage off that. And you can see the great accuracy on this gun, but also some of the weaknesses. He's starting to pen the cheeks and the top of this turret, which is something you have to be aware of and be careful. Obviously it's pretty troll and it's going to bounce some stuff, but unlike some of the Russian heavies where they have nearly impenetrable turrets that you can just sit there and let stuff bounce off, the key is to keep yourself in motion. When you're hull down like this, keep rocking and kind of moving around as they aim at you, and it's going to be much harder to get a clean shot, and that's when you can kind of utilize the armor that you do have here. So obviously don't do what that Leo PTA is doing and block your heavy so you can't move around, but yeah, just kind of have to work around with it. That's why I'm starting to move my hull a little bit too and giving myself some more angles, and just keep this gun in the battle. That's the main thing, is I want to keep this gun in the battle. It's not necessarily something you want to scream to the front lines with, but if you can kind of stay behind some bigger heavies, if you have that opportunity, or run it with mediums, it's going to do a really good job. So I'm just keeping an eye, because here on Middleburg you have to be careful of the center and tanks starting to flank around behind you, so that's why I'm turning, because this 54 is pushing really hard and I don't want him to get away and have free reign on us. That's why I also take a shot into the tracks, and you can see me start to move that hull as he comes around. You want to keep those fronts in, keep it wiggling, and that way he's going to have a much harder time taking the time to aim and being able to get through there. So keeping an eye on him, just want to make sure he's not going to do a complete loop and come right back around, because sometimes they'll do that, which he did kind of go back to that spot. So I'm just going to try and take a peek and see if I can't get it, because getting a T-54 out of a battle like this is always going to be pretty advantageous, and luckily you get that to kind of sneak through. Almost wasn't able to. And now it kind of moves me so I can see this Panther too, and you can see where I kind of straighten my hull up but then point it towards the church. Even though that church is a long way away, I'm actually effectively side scraping off of it. You know, you don't have to be right against a building to be able to do that. You can do it at some distance. It's just being aware of what is exposed on your tank and kind of working off that. So I'm pretty sure he's turned around, but I'm keeping an eye on it just because I can circle around, because I want to make sure that and help our team get rid of this Yag Tiger, because we're starting to kind of win this battle up at the top, which is the first place you want to do it. J Panther is going for the cap, and you can see why this is a little bit older video, because of where the cap is. The other one's a little bit newer, but I apparently haven't been playing the Conqueror a lot lately, so you get a little bit older kind of gameplay with this, but most of it still holds completely true. Just obviously the J Panther probably wouldn't be in that location, kind of in the modern makeup of the map. So I love this tank because you have games like this where I don't feel like I was working too hard, but by keeping the gun in the battle pretty much through the entire thing, it really starts to rack up the damage. It's amazing how quickly it builds, and you can see right there almost 6,000 damage on what felt like a pretty average game, just because you're kind of ripping through and making sure that gun's in it. Okay, so I'm going to move on to actually another game on Middleburg on the same side, but I decided to go ahead and include it as well just because it plays quite a bit different than the other game, and so you can kind of see how the tank works in different situations. One of the major downsides to the Conqueror, in my opinion, is its really lack of gun depression. It has very, very little gun depression, so if you come up on these ridge lines, it can be a little bit challenging to shoot down and work through some of those situations, so you have to find ways to work around it and get a little bit creative. You can do some of the techniques like rolling back up onto a hill to kind of gain some gun depression, but you're going to leave yourself more exposed. So a lot of times it's about positioning and also turning this tank into a little bit more of a sniper to make sure you're not the target and letting some of your bigger tanks do the damage. This is a primarily tier 10 battle, so that's why it's a little bit different too. I'm actually going to do a lot of my damage versus the tier 10 tanks, so that's you can kind of see where this gun starts to shine a little bit. So when it's pretty obvious they're not coming up to the hill, I rotate around. I like to work off of this central kind of hill because it will allow you to start to shoot down on them if they try and work up to your flank. It leaves them pretty much sitting ducks because they're so exposed. So with the Yag, I obviously put the shot in the 183, and now we can work this Yag Tagger who left himself far too exposed. Teams also like to sit on the cap to try and draw you down, but I find you want to make sure you deal with any of the stragglers coming up to get you first, because it's just a natural way to kind of pick off tanks and put yourself in a better situation. So I'm rolling around to see if any of those tanks are coming up to get us, and they certainly have. Get myself a little bit too exposed, but now I can settle down into this ridgeline, and which works really fantastic on this map because it doesn't have a lot of gun depression, but still provides enough protection on the tank. The 61 has rolled back a little bit, and that's why I'm going to go ahead and push forward, because the 215 is looking away, and I can keep an eye on the 61 and make sure he's not going to pop in on us, while now we can kind of tag team this 215B and get a really nice solid gun out of the battle pretty early. Plus our team is starting to roll around, and actually we've got a few tanks YOLOing a bit, so now we know where they are, which is the positive, but the negative is we lost a tank there for really not a lot of reasons. So I'm just going to come in and take the free shots first. I don't have a lot of preference on what I'm shooting at this point. I'm just trying to farm some damage at tier 10. You want to whittle them down as quickly as possible. It's pretty obviously we're going to lose another tank that's YOLO'd a bit, so I want to conserve hit points as much as possible. So anything that's going to cross in front of my gun is going to be kind of the natural target. The mouse has gotten himself really exposed, but to get a shot on him, I would have to really kind of commit out because of the gun depression I was talking about. If I was in the position of the IS-7 to my right, I could use that hill to gain some artificial gun depression. But since he's already set up there and there's not room for me to sneak over, there's not a lot I can do against the mouse except for kind of help them keep him where he's at while we start to work on some of the other tanks. So just keeping an eye on the IS-4 and such. Also trying to get some gun bounce. That's a good way to add gun depression. I was talking about, you can see by rocking forward and backward, the gun actually starts to bounce vertically, and it will go outside its normal bounds of gun depression, which lets you get some shots in. It's a little bit of luck because obviously you're not going to have it fully aimed, but you can get some nice sneak shots in that way as well. So just keeping gun trained that direction and watching where everything's going to start to pop up. Kind of decide with the IS-7 there I'm not going to be able to be as helpful, so I'm going to just kind of rotate over to this other ridge line, just move over one so I have a little bit more room to work, which actually works out pretty nice because this E75 has shown up on this side, so I can try and take a peek and see if I can't get a few shots, but more importantly give myself a little bit more room to work on the mouse. Unfortunately, with that great armor and its angle, even with APCR I can't get through the side of it, but it's just kind of what it works. Either way, this has been a nice kind of little reposition for me to try and help them a little bit. So I'm just looking for shots there. Can finally get the APCR down through it. 215 rams him, which is never a great idea in a mouse, but easily able to go ahead and get rid of him and can start to roll in a little bit. Because clearly the tanks that are left are a little bit smarter and are holding down and trying to stay protected, so instead I can try and work on the weak ones that are left. So nice easy kill on the E75. I can see the team really flanking in on the E4 to my left, so I'm going to concentrate more on the 183 and handle him a little bit carefully, but it's almost impossible he could one-shot me here, so I've got a little bit of flexibility. So I'm going to try and push him and make him kind of force a shot. You can see him just kind of get out in front of that gun. It's the nice mobility that you get on the Conqueror that is a little bit more, you know, kind of medium-like with that. So hopefully it helps a little bit. Normally I don't like to do 2 videos on the same map, but they did play so differently that I thought it was still pretty good examples of using the gun. Kind of a low damage ace on that, but it was shooting a lot of tier 10 tanks, so that's probably why.